Hi everyone. So I have tried to do updates in the last however many months and it just hasn't felt right. There was a lot of stuff going on in between the miscarriage and now. I am moving on to my second transfer this month, maybe beginning of February, depending on when my lining is ready. Hopefully it'll be in the next week. I'm going in for my lining check on Tuesday. So we had to do a lot to get here. So we'll start off with after the miscarriage. After the miscarriage, I had a phone call consultation with my doctor, which led us to trying a little bit more to my protocol. So one, we started with doing an ERA and an ALICE to check to see if there are any other reasons why I'm miscarrying. Because now, previous miscarriages were, there's a way to know whether the embryo was good or not, because one, the miscarriages happened completely. I've never needed a DNC, so they've never been tested, as well as sometimes they've happened so early. So now we've tested a highly graded, genetically tested embryo, and so we knew it was good. It implanted, my numbers were great, saw heartbeat at 6.5 weeks, did see a small subchorionic hemorrhage, which now this is the second pregnancy that I've had a subchorionic hemorrhage, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be prone to them regardless. So now this is my second pregnancy with that, but it was very small, so they didn't see any need to worry about it. I did bleed quite a bit, which is why I went in for a 6.5 week scan instead of a 7.5 to 8 week scan. So then they did book me in for 2 weeks after that for my regular 8-week scan, but because of the bleeding they wanted me to come back sooner. So I ended up having more bleeding and came in the following week, and with the amount of bleeding I had, I just had a feeling that it was not good, and it turned out that I did have a miscarriage. So with all that information and my previous history, we had to take a different route this time. So he was thinking ERA, and ALICE to make sure that it's not an implantation issue, even though implantation has occurred, but maybe it's just not latching on well enough because maybe the timing is off, as well as doing ERA, and ALICE also looks for other reasons why this could be causing miscarriage. So microbiome issues with the overall environment of your uterus, as well as lining issues like endometritis. So ERA, and ALICE came back positive for high levels of yeast, which causes the microbiome of your uterus to be off and could cause issues with miscarriage. Usually implantation issues, but that doesn't seem to be my problem. It's getting past the 7 weeks of carrying. So with that in mind, we figured, okay, we're adding vaginal probiotics to counteract the high yeast, because high levels of lactobacillus have been shown to increase, like people with high lactobacillus are more likely to get pregnant, and then ones who have lower lactobacillus in the environment of the uterus tend to have more miscarriages or lack of implantation. So we added in the vaginal probiotic, and then my ERA came back, I was post-receptive. So I was transferring later than my receptivity, not earlier. So that's why it's still implanted. It was still within the realm of possibility because it still was within a good range, but it was post optimal receptivity. And my receptivity was off by at least 24 hours. So they wanted to redo the ERA only of the ERA and my analysis. So we decided, instead of doing a transfer, we switched that cycle to an ERA. I was very distraught because I thought that we were doing everything we could already with the information we thought we were going to get, but because multiple issues came back, they decided to redo the ERA and then reassess. So we started on vaginal probiotics, decided to switch to an ERA just a day earlier to see if the positive for the post-receptivity was in fact correct, because it was so far off, they wanted to rule out random issues where it was just like a false positive. So that's what we decided to do. And then 4 days before my ERA, I got a call from, actually I got a message in the Medeo app, which is where the portal. So I got a message in the portal saying that we were canceling the ERA and they were going to put me on Prevera to start my period and start a new cycle for an ERA and my ALICE. I was very confused because we had just talked about it. We were moving on to an ERA only. I had paid and there was no communication until all of a sudden, nope, we're not doing this. Very confused. So I asked them to speak with my doctor. He called me, or no, the nurse called me, and she said, okay, yes, more information came back. So the test for endometritis takes longer to complete. And so when I got the information back about the post-receptivity as well as the high yeast, the endometritis test was not completed yet. So that came back later than the rest. And that caused them to think maybe we need to redo the ERA and my ALICE after a 2-week span of antibiotics. Now I had done a week of antibiotics before prep for the embryo transfer that turned ERA, but only 1 week, and their protocol is 2 weeks. So now I had done a week of antibiotics, I was off of it for a week and a half, and now I was going to start on for another 2. Now this does a whole lot to the lining of the uterus, not the lining of the uterus, sorry. This does a whole lot to the microbiome of the uterus, because being on antibiotics can throw off the lactobacillus in the uterus, which can cause yeast infections. So I already had high yeast. Now they're making me go on another 2 weeks of antibiotics after already being on it for a week. And so I had to stop my probiotic because they said it's not going to help you. It's actually just going to be a waste of money. They are really expensive. So they said just stop it. Once you're done your 2 weeks of antibiotics, start on the probiotics again. This killed me because we already had to postpone the embryo transfer so that we can do an ERA, which I was already in the middle of a cycle of some sort, so that was going to be okay. But now they're telling me, sorry, we cannot use this cycle anymore because we need you to be on the antibiotics for 2 weeks before we do the ERA and on ALICE to see if it took care of the endometritis issue. So that still did leave me with the possibility of doing a transfer in December when I was doing ERA. Now that they were canceling that cycle, and moving to an ERA and an Alice, that shifted my cycle by about 2 weeks, which means that I'd be getting my period at the beginning of December, which would not leave me enough time to do a transfer before Christmas, before they shut down for the end of the year. So they do a shutdown at the end of the year for 2 to 3 weeks so that they can sanitize and prep and give everything a break and do a deep clean. So even though I understood and I wanted everything to be right for when I did a transfer, it's very emotional, especially after everything that happened with the miscarriage. I was very distraught. So I did go and see my general practitioner and just kind of explained what was going on and how I was feeling. I wasn't sleeping. I was falling asleep at work. I wasn't able to fall asleep. I didn't want to get out of bed. So I was just, all the signs were pointing towards depression at that point. So after the ERA, Emma and Alice, the second one, which I did complete at the beginning of December, I did go on some antidepressants to kind of let my mental state kind of reset, because I was in such a bad state at that point. I did go on a half dose of the medication, and I found that it really did help. So that has been good. I feel better. I have moved up to a full dose just to see if it's going to help me more, or if the half dose seems to be the perfect amount for me. Haven't really noticed much of a difference with a full dose, so I actually think I might continue on with the half dose after this. One, because I feel a little more comfortable, and it still did help. So I think that's where I'm gonna end up staying. But at least I had time over the Christmas holidays to just relax. So I also get a week off at Christmas because my work shuts down as well for about a week. So I was able to kind of reset and relax and just process. So going into January this year, I felt really good and prepared, other than the stress of not knowing what the results are going to be for the second ERA. So now moving on to January, January 7th, I had a phone call with my my fertility clinic about the results of the second ERA. The second ERA and Alice. So we kind of just talked about again what the protocol is going to look like moving forward. And so he told me, okay, so your ERA receptivity came back pre-receptive, so you're kind of in the middle. I am still post-receptive for what most people are, but I wasn't as post-receptive as the first test told me I was. So our goal hours is 111 progesterone hours. So now we have a number, so that's good. It's about 4.5 days rather than 5. And the microbiome test came back still that I had the high yeast, which made sense because I was only on the probiotics for about a week before, so it didn't have time to really help. So I have been on the probiotic now for over a month, so I'm hoping that it has been helping and that it's changed that, but I am not going through another lining chest. I'm not going through another ERA. So we're just gonna hope that it's doing what it needs to do. But the endometritis test part of it came back clean. So I do not have chronic endometritis, which is great. So I do not need to be on a antibiotic before my protocol, because seeing as I have the high yeast, we'd be trading one issue for another. So now that I don't have chronic endometritis, we can avoid the antibiotics unless absolutely needed before transfer, so that the probiotics have a chance to do their job and create a more healthy environment. So it's not for sure 100% that I'll be doing it this month because I haven't gone in for my lining check, but that is in a couple days. In a couple days, if my lining looks good, then we will move on to transfer about 5 days later, because I'm sure they'll start me on the progesterone the following day, and then it'll be 4.5 days later. I'm still terrified, but you know, gotta have faith. I did also go for my intralipid appointment. That was interesting. So because I have a PCR, which is a like a genetic anomaly that causes a higher risk of blood clotting. It's usually in later on in life that it causes an issue, but it still means I'm at a higher risk for blood clotting. So because the intralipids is a fat emulsion, it still does have the potential to cause clotting. So she decided to go really slow. So most people, an intralipid infusion is about an hour to an hour and a half. But because she decided to go slow, make sure that I was reacting well, that there were no clots, no pain, no nothing, it took about 3 hours, which I'm not completely upset with. I was sitting in a nice cozy chair, just, you know, hooked up to a nice IV. I have terrible veins, so mine was here in the arm, which was actually kind of nice. It was not in like a crease or anything like that. Just relaxed a little bit. I forgot to bring my earbuds, so I couldn't listen to my ebook, but I did just kind of scroll on my phone, relax, and, you know, take in the day. So that was kind of nice. And then we'll see on Tuesday to see if if I'm approved to move forward with the transfer, and then if I get a positive pregnancy test, I'll go in for another intralipid appointment. So that's where I'm at right now. Sorry for the state of my shirt. That's what having cats is like. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I can try and answer them. I know that my protocol is quite different from most people's. Mine's kind of what my doctor calls all with the kitchen sink. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Once again, leave comments if you have any questions. Have a good night.